little bit about yourself. So I'll start with Selva because you suggested the topic. So please, the topic, of course, we know. What is the topic, Selva? Tell me.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today. Basically, my name is Selva and I'm from Australia. I was born in Iraq. And what I'm here to tell you today is basically how mediation can be known to everyone and how we can get it to the people. And basically, a lot of people just haven't heard of it. So we're here to make it more known.
Perfect. And Jawad, please.
Yeah, I'm from India, of course, as you know, and I'm based in Chennai, the southernmost part of India. And I have been, well, I just want to tell you this, that I was in Belfast recently, last week. And there I met an Irish mediator who said, in fact, I recorded his statement. After worshipping the satanic church of litigation for 25 years, I converted to the true church of mediation for the last 16 years, he said. So, which is virtually my life story, because I was in litigation for almost 25 years. And then once I found mediation, I decided that, okay, litigation is not my cup of tea, and this is where I really belong. So that's been
no, interesting thing is, Jawad, that this is actually the story, of course, of a lot of lawyers. Yes. The problem is a lot of them are still stuck. They can't move out of litigation because mediation hasn't taken off as well. So that's why the topic is important, that we have to get mediation to the people so that, of course, it's used a lot more. And then people who are kind of frustrated in that whole adversarial system who want to get out of it. So I think this is a very relevant topic, that connecting to that also. So that's because if you, that's like we start from there and then the ball keeps rolling and then things go on. So Selva, you have to take the lead and then we'll follow with you. Yeah, please.
No problem. Thank you for that. So basically, I'm a lawyer and a mediator. And being a lawyer, I get to see that how matters work, how family law system works. And being a mediator, I get to see how much time they actually save by doing mediation. And actually, the time that is spent, the money that is spent, it's basically arguing for a point. Whereas mediation, you go to an agreement. And then once you're in that agreement, if you're lucky enough, you'll come out with an agreement, people thinking that, oh, it's only an agreement, but that agreement can take years in courts to make that agreement. Where in mediation, you're sitting there, you're arguing your point, you're saying your side of the view, you're saying what you want, and the other party is either agreeing to it and coming to an agreement, which in turn is actually saving both parties. So I really stress that as a lawyer, we're happy to take, we get paid by hourly rate. And no matter how long the matter takes, we'll still be getting paid until the matter finishes. As a mediator, we literally finish the matter within days, because you'll have two parties that know what they want. And then, like, for example, if they're fighting over custody or property in a family court, you have to do that separately. In mediation, it's all done at once, and then you can come out saving your time and saving your energy. Having said that, there's a lot of other matters, like, for example, when two people have a car accident and they don't have insurance, or companies with their employees and employer, there's a lot of matters that go to court or go to tribunals, when really mediation has helped in that sense and made the matter so quickly resolved that they saved a lot of money and time and reputation. Because if you go to court, the reputation for different cultures is not considered to be reliable, whereas this mediation is done so privately that people don't even know about it. So in my perspective, I highly recommend it, and I highly can see that around the globe, people are investing in it. Especially lawyers, like you see a lot of lawyers, barristers, now judges even, they become mediators because it's the next thing. So yes.
But Jawad, please, your initial points. Yeah.
I think I agree with Selva when she talks about mediation taking the place perhaps or replacing litigation. I mean, I don't see it replacing litigation as such, but how I see it is that basically I think what we need to do is bring about a cultural change, because we all over the world, we have inherited a system, because most of us were under the British dominion, and we inherited a system of jurisprudence that is, rooted in the social contract theory or the positive law theory. And we have set up these institutions for delivering justice. We have the legislatures which frame the laws, and the courts which actually test those laws and uphold the laws. But what happens basically is that if you look at it from the perspective of how it actually translates into real justice for the people, we put human interactions in silos of rights and wrongs, and as defined by the law. And what we do is we adjudicate whatever the human interactions that take place, the conflicts that arise between people in terms of rights and wrongs. So when I was talking in Belfast on on this aspect, I said that I quoted Rumi, a Persian poet. I'm sure some of you would have heard of Jalaluddin Rumi. There's a very favorite quote of his which I often cite when I talk of mediation, because it resonates a lot with what the concept of mediation is all about. So he says, out beyond those ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there lies a field. I will meet you there. So where the law confines itself to finding out the right and the wrong, in mediation we try to transcend that and see how we can solve the problem so that the future relationship, the future interactions are conflict-free. Now, what happens basically is, because for perhaps 2 or 3 centuries, we have been used to a particular system of jurisprudence, of resolving our disputes in a particular manner. Now, for that culture to be replaced by a culture of dialogue and conversation, where people can sit across and talk to each other, perhaps a conversation that is facilitated by a neutral, and then reach a conclusion, is going to take some time. Especially, of course, Australia and other countries are marching much faster there. But in a high context culture like India, I believe it is going to take some time. But what is very encouraging, Vikram, if you see from where we started in 2005, when we started our first court-annexed mediation center in the Madras High Court, when lawyers used to, laugh at us. Okay, so when I took the decision of taking the plunge in mediation, giving up my litigation practice, many of my friends thought that I was committing professional suicide, harakiri. They said, "You're mad. I mean, are you a tree hugger? Are you are you some kind of an activist who has some kind of lofty ideals, and you want to compromise your career for those ideals?" But today, what is happening, the transformation that has come about is that these very same friends, in their cases, they're asking for me to be appointed as a mediator, and they're advising their clients that, why don't you resolve it through mediation? So there is a change happening, but my only problem is I'm in a bit of a hurry, like many others, because I have chosen mediation as my profession. And I wanted to really take off in a big way. So perhaps I'm being impatient. Perhaps, for that cultural paradigm to change from right and finding out rights and wrongs to a concept of, having a conversation to find out what we need to do about this. Yes, something has happened between us, but how do we move forward for that culture to come about? It's taking some time. Just one point that I would like to make is, what is really encouraging is to see people in the age group of Selva and younger people also, law students, the readiness with which they're embracing these concepts. Because when I coach students in mediation for mediation competitions, or when we conduct mediation training programs in universities, we find that, many of them say that we want a career in this. We want a career in mediation. So that is what fascinates us. So there are a whole lot of youngsters who really want this culture to change and the culture of mediation to become the mainstream method of dispute resolution.
So you can't imagine, Jawad, how many points you've picked up on that for discussion. One, that whole concept of the conditioning of the mind due to colonization and all, we are taking that up on a separate discussion. You have to be part of that. Then you're talking about profession, that you've taken it up as a profession, so that's a separate discussion we're having. Is it a profession? So that's another one. But otherwise, look, let me tell you, I mean, if we keep talking about it, the court system, you've heard me saying it a lot of times, so that's another discussion we're having. So all these discussions you have to be part of, because these are all important discussions. That's as to, I mean, we casually are saying that mediation and people know about it, but Selva, I think her point, I don't know, I mean, you're going to take us through that. Do people really know about it, or is it that we live in a bubble and we talk about it, and as lawyers you are exposed to the court system, so definitely you hear about it? What are the people saying in Australia? What are, I mean, down to the grassroots level, has mediation taken off? Because Australia is still considered a mature market in terms of mediation, but grassroots level, what has your experience been?
What I find is that a lot of people don't know about it. Like lawyers know about it, and most lawyers support it because they get to see how they can solve clients' matters. Some lawyers don't support it because it's a voluntary part. Getting someone to mediation is a hard part. So lawyers can encourage people to do it, but at the end of the day, how do you get the other party to come to mediation? And you have to be like encouraging two people. Whereas as a lawyer, all you have to do is like help your client or encourage your client and prove to your client you're a good person. But calling another party and saying that I've been approached by so-and-so, they won't even come to you because they're like, oh, I'm not going where the other party has taken. 100% you're going to be on their side. So I think that's where the problem is, where they don't understand, most people, that you're not really taking anyone's side. So you're literally in the middle. And the other thing is, like, I work for a lawyer and a mediator, but at the same time, I have my own mediation firm as a mediator. And what I find is that mediation always comes, being a lawyer. So you're always using mediation, like negotiation, and sometimes you even solve matters before even going to court. So I believe that there should be more social events. There should be more educational things about mediation. Make mediation be compulsory. Like for us, there's a lot of matters, court matters, that you have to do mediation before you actually go to court. And you have to prove that you've actually tried to do it, which is a good thing. I don't know what India's up to, but I think you're getting there as well. But it's that good thing. But yet again, a lot of people will have a problem. They will be like having problems over $2,000, $3,000. And then when they actually go to court, what they realize is they lose more money than they actually wanted to gain in the first place, because of the court system and the lawyers involved. But having said that, there's some matters without going court, you can't solve it. So we still need lawyers, and we still need, myself representing big matters. But the thing is, for mediation, it should be more used for matters that are not worth going to court. Not only does it solve the court, having overheads and everything. So I believe that social media should advertise it more. We should be talking to people that have problems. And our problem in Australia, like in our concept, we've got like legal aid, which helps people that are not earning as much. And then you've got lawyers. We don't have that middle party. And that's where I believe that mediation comes in. We're like the middle party for people that can't afford lawyers. And then we're that middle party for people that actually do not meet the requirement for legal aid. And then legal aid has like their own system and everything. But being the area I live in is like the west of Sydney. So in the west, most people will be eligible. And then there's people that are not eligible, and you'll see them in courts representing themselves. When I just look at them and I'm like, only if I could do that as mediation. So I think courts and, in general, social media, I think it should be more out there. And that's why I like communicating and, connecting with other countries, because it is very useful. And I think that's the future of the court system. We're not going to, cross out the court altogether. So lawyers are still going to have, doing their jobs. But I'm talking about small matters, people that can't afford lawyers, people that want to just solve their matter. And it's so easy to solve it, but it's because that's the only system that they know. So
Okay,
I
Selva, you
hope
said, yeah.
get there.
Again, you've picked up a lot of points which are going to come up in the discussion. The first thing is you said mandatory mediation, and India is getting there. Definitely, Jawad has heard me a lot of times, so I won't go into it. But we are having a discussion on this aspect on mandatory mediation, to push or not to push. So that's coming up later. Because again, look, you've said this about the courts and the lawyers, but we have to look into the whole thing. That is that a colonizer's whole concept that we've picked up? Is it an aspect of colonization we have to get over? That dispute resolution does not have to happen in courts only. Lawyers are not the people who have to be part of dispute resolution exclusively or most of the time. There is a whole lot of dispute resolution which has to happen outside the courts and is happening outside the courts. It's not that it is not happening. Of course, as a lawyer, if you're part of the court system, you think this is all that is happening in relation to dispute resolution. People are doing this, either they're sitting down negotiating, either they have already on an informal basis mediation happening. Because look, this formal concept of mediation and the way that technical thing is, of course, discussed around the world, is a very small, very, very small part of what mediation takes place in families and communities. Very small. There was a report in India, there was a government body and a non-profit who got together and made out a report, and Jawad will also quote that sometime maybe in the whole session, that 3% to 25% of the matters come into courts. So I always, because statistics you take advantage of, 97% don't come into courts. So can you imagine 18 million matters in India going to courts? What that 97% is? Calculation I might be a little slow in, so maybe it's about 600 million. 600 million matters out there, and only 18 million come, only because we, of course, and I mean, I would not like to keep repeating myself, because Jabad has heard me a lot of times. Last symposium I went about it and people have started calling it ranting. My ranting. So I don't want to rant anymore, but we have to obviously look at that part, that this whole, the whole colonization aspect of courts, and the aspect of involvement of mediator, of lawyers, we discussed that. The other thing you said about legal aid, of course, in terms of the litigation, there is a concept of legal aid that is discussed, but that is for people who cannot afford that litigation. They come from a background. What is happening in mediation is a totally different thing. It's being given out for free. So we have a discussion later in the conference of free or pro bono, that aspect of it, because we have to be very clear that in the court system, because of course I don't want it in the court system, that's another discussion, but in the court system, why are you giving it out free? People can afford it. And can you imagine now, and you would know this, everywhere in the world where mediation in the court system has taken off, lawyers who represent the clients in the mediation are getting huge fees. And the mediator, like Jawad, I'm not part of the court system, he's part of the court system. You ask him, I mean, what he gets in the court system is nothing compared to the fees he gets outside. So why should he be pushed into why should he's passionate about it. He's a very good person. He wants to help people. But because of that, what happens is a senior lawyer like him is giving it out free to people who can afford it. So people would rather go into the court, get Jawad as the mediator, and not have to pay his fees, and get the mediation done, because he's not going to differentiate between me doing it on a private fee or on the court system. He's going to do the same thing. So, and a person like me who only practices as a mediator and not part of the court system, every time he does a free mediation, he is hitting my livelihood. Because if senior people like him dole it out free, what am I going to do? I'm not going to be sitting here only promoting mediation, nothing else. So that's another issue we have to discuss. So Jawad will, of course, give his, I mean, he's, of course, part of both the systems. So he will tell us how he looks at it.
No, I think we are all on the same page as far as that aspect is concerned. You referred to the percentage of cases that come to the courts. I have the ODR handbook, which Niti Aayog came out with, Vikram. And
That's
that
the one I
gives
was quoting from.
policy.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I as soon as you mentioned that, I immediately searched for it and got it on my iPad. See, it's what it says is it is not surprising, therefore, that an estimated 75 to 97% of justiciable problems never reach the courts. If we consider the statistic to be true, we must acknowledge that anywhere between 5 million and 40 million justiciable issues are never brought to court each month.
Then they've got that wrong, Jawad, because I'm saying only 18 million go into courts. At 3% of 600 million will be 18.
Per month, each month they're
month.
Month.
Oh,
5
yeah,
to
that's
40
okay.
million are not coming to court.
Per month. Wow.
Each month they're talking about. So you can imagine the numbers that we are talking about here. And this is one thing that we always tell lawyers who oppose mediation. We tell them that you're only expanding the pie, because what you're doing is, what you're fighting over is just about 3 to 5% of justiciable causes that are coming to you. And it is on that people like Harish Salve or Sori Sorabji or Fali Nariman are building up their fortunes. So imagine that, when you open up the field, when people realize, as Selva was pointing out, she made a very interesting point. She said that what happens to those people who, on the one hand, are not eligible for legal aid, and on the other hand, they are not able to afford the lawyer's fees? Where do they go to? So that is the window where mediation provides an opportunity for them to resolve their disputes amicably, right? And these are not disputes which are just which have small stakes. There are big stake disputes which really require professional intervention from a skilled mediator who can perhaps sit and find a resolution. Now, we are not just talking about disputes once the disputes manifest themselves out of perhaps an agreement or any relationship or any contractual relationship or any other relationship. We are also talking about preemption, right? Now, for example, if two companies are entering into a contract and there is a negotiation going on how the contract should be worked out. Now, what happens? They are represented by their lawyers, and lawyers carry the client's perspective to it. There is no neutral perspective to that. So that is where I think companies can even think of engaging mediators for helping them, facilitating that negotiation to help them to enter into a contract that would not result in a dispute at any future point of time, because that will give them a neutral perspective of how the contract should look like. So the scope is very wide. The only problem is the people embracing that idea. Okay, people making that shift in their mindset from looking at everything from a problematic point of view to something that can be a problem-solving perspective. Now, that is where the cultural shift has to happen. There has to be a paradigm shift in the thinking of not only lawyers, but also the stakeholders, and from all other professions too. So when we talk about that, see, I'll just tell you a few examples of how people behave. Like you said, one, the pro bono mediations that we do, it is pro bono. I don't acknowledge the honorarium. They very decently call it as honorarium to honor us. So if you succeed, if the mediation results in an agreement, you get a princely sum of 7,500 in my court.
You have to tell us the fee. You have to convert in dollars. You have to convert in dollars. US dollars, 100 US dollars.
100 US dollars. That is the kind of fee, and you spend hours and hours together talking to the parties. But also what is there is that our rules permit you, supposing the parties choose the mediator, or the court appoints a mediator specifically by name, instead of just following the roster system in the court, in the mediation center, you are entitled to fix your fees. You can, agree with the parties for your fees. So that aspect of it, nobody highlights, and the judges in their orders don't make it clear that, since we are specifically appointing so-and-so as a mediator, the mediator has the right to fix the fees, to agree on the fees with the parties. Now, many times what happens is lawyers tell us, because when they see the amount of work and the effort that we put in, they say that, considering the kind of effort that you're putting in, I think we should agree upon a fee. So we do agree on a fee, and sometimes, parties pay it voluntarily and willingly, because that is permitted under the rules. Now, many times what happens is when one party may be willing to pay the fee, the other party may not be willing to pay the fee. So we come across all these kinds of issues that are there. Now, sometimes, what happens, for example, one lawyer contacted me for a private mediation, okay, and asked me what is my fee for that. And I quoted my fee. And she went back and advised her clients that, okay, this is the mediator's fee. If you go for private mediation, here's what we can do. We'll file a case, get it referred, ask for the same mediator.
Exactly.
You don't have to pay any fee.
That's exactly what I told you. This is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, so this is what is happening. So, you know, the problem here is, I think, that is where I believe that, you know, mediation has to come up as a profession, as a standalone profession, need not necessarily be confined only to lawyers. It should expand in its scope, and it should include people from other professions also, perhaps chartered accountants, engineers, doctors. Why can't they also be mediators? What is the, I mean, where is the, just because lawyers under, again, colonial construct, lawyers are wear those black robes and they appear in the courts, and people go to them because they have a dispute, doesn't mean that they have a sort of a monopoly over dispute resolution.
Exactly.
So that is where I feel that, you know, others should also come into this. And the whole idea is that, you know, the culture of dispute resolution should change from an adversarial mindset to a collaborative mindset, where you acknowledge that, yes, we have a problem. We need somebody who will take a neutral view of this and who will help us to, you know, move from our positions, help us to understand what our real interests are, help us to recognize our biases and prejudices, and, you know, perhaps, you know, guide us towards a solution. So it is that mindset, that recognition that has to come. And also, you know, many lawyers, there is, Selva was also talking about the awareness part of it. And, you know, many times what happens is lawyers don't understand the nuances of the mediation process. They don't understand how complex it is and what kind of skills that the mediator uses to, you know, help the parties to move beyond their entrenched positions and, you know, identify their interests and, you know, move towards a solution. So they don't understand, and they think that they can do it themselves. So when you fix a fee for a mediation, the lawyers say that, you know, why do we need a mediator for this? We are there, we'll talk and we'll try to resolve it. But what happens ultimately, it doesn't end in a resolution. So these are all the some of the problems that, you know, that are there. But I think it's only a question of time when, you know, the realization will come that, okay, this is something different, and this is something that we need to do, and this is perhaps the way forward to ensure that, of course, imagining a conflict-free society is utopia, but, you know, at least deal with conflicts in a way that would not necessarily result in huge costs, as Selva pointed out, or, you know, where people come out so damaged and so affected by the whole process that perhaps at the end of the whole journey, they think that why ever did we start on this path?
But I think, Jawad, again, so many points that you picked up. What I will do, Selva, is first I'll maybe shock you, because Australia also, senior lawyers do not charge as much as he mentioned. Harish Salve is a senior advocate here. He could charge anything about $30,000 for one hearing. Okay. And more than that also. Some cases I've been told he charges sometimes more than that also. So now the issue that comes up. Now, first of all, of course, we're taking it to the people. In society, in general, money has become what people value. Now, when a person looks at a lawyer getting that fees, they think lawyers has to be valued with that fees. And when Jawad gets $100 and he spent hours, that is one hearing I'm talking about here, one whole, I mean, there'll be sessions after sessions, $100. Now, how do I first tell people that you value this mediator? Because in a society where materialism and money is valued, how do I tell them that? Because I've heard this from a senior Nigerian mediator. He says, when I go into court, here I go as a mediator, and obviously I'm not wearing the gown and the wig. In Nigeria, they're still wearing the wig. The colonial, the hangover is a little too much, so they still wear the wig. He's a lawyer, comes in with the wig and the robe and everything, and I go in, of course, not in that. And then the parties say this guy gets as much as I clerk in terms of the thing, so they value you like that. So imagine that if you're taking it to the people, they have to also value the whole what inputs you're giving. We feel that we are very valuable, or maybe we are going wrong. Maybe we do not add any value. We are $100 for hours and hours. Maybe that's what we are worth. So maybe we should just tell ourselves that we have to go beyond fees. We just have to rise up. We wear these saffron clothes in India, white robe somewhere else, and just roam around the streets. And that's what we should do. Maybe that's the way. Maybe we're going wrong in that. So I think that's a thing. But of course, I mean, in terms of he's saying expand it, that's maybe another way to reach people, that other professions come in and then they reach out to their clients, or I mean, telling them. So if he says chartered accountants, so they take it to their clients. So you expand it. So that aspect is also something we have to talk about, because we're talking about legislation also later in the conference. Does legislation hinder that? So we also have to look at whether the whole concept of qualifications and other thing, because whenever you talk about profession, it means all those things. So that aspect also needs to be discussed. So these, looking at all this, Selva, you please take us on what your thoughts on that are.
My thoughts will be basically you have to show the clients what is the actual value that they're receiving, not what is the value in you. Like, for example, I don't have to explain who I am. Being a lawyer already gives me that advantage because they know who they're coming to talk to, but not giving legal advice at the same time and being just a mediator is basically telling people, look, I know what happens if you do choose that road. But at the same time, what value do I give to the actual matter? And try to make them see the value that will come out from choosing this area. Whereas if there are times people don't even go and solve their problems because they're like, oh, if I solve it, it'll take a long time and then it'll take, amount of money, and people just don't want the headache. Whereas if I come in and I'll be like, who said you have to take a long time? I can solve the matter in 2 days. It just depends on what you're willing to bring to the table. And that's where the main problem I see in our society is they want to solve their problem, and it's a big problem, but they have nothing to bring to the table. You have to bring something to the table. You have to make an offer that you show the other side that offer, you're losing something as well. Whereas a lot of times people will come to an agreement, but it will only satisfy one party. And that's where the other party is not willing. I think you're just meeting halfway. And that's how I get, clients to come to me, because I'll be like to them, are you willing to go halfway? And to be honest, like, I agree about, your appearance, the way you talk does play a big role. And it does make you get, further clients because people know you of who you are. But these days, it's also word of mouth. Like, if I can solve one person's matter, that's one person telling 5 other people. And then those people will tell other people. And that's how I look at it as well. It's the value of what you create to one party. And looking at problems, people get emotional. People cry over it. People spend hours and days trying to solve a particular matter. But if someone just comes like a third party, like some mediation, all they wanted was to hear sorry from the other side. They were willing to spend so much money and time just to go all the way, but all they really wanted was that one thing. And I think that's what mediation does. The first question I have, I'm like, look, if right now, today, you got everything you want from this other party, what is it? What do you want? And 90%, they don't even know what they want. I don't want anything. I just want that party to, lose everything. But I'm like, but what do you want? Like right now, if I can give it to you, what is it? And they don't know what they want. So I think some people just have extra money on the side that they fight over things or they argue over things. And I see it with family law because I do so many family law matters, and they will go all the way. But at the end of the day, it's just that satisfaction that they're waiting for. And they just don't want to put their side or their, how do I put it, like something that they will lose. They just want the other party to be doing all the losing. and they'll be happy about it. And that's where the mediator will be like, look, do you really, really want to say no? Because if you say yes, this matter is going to be solved tomorrow. And then it also like I can't go in too much detail, but it just examples of people trying to make the other party suffer. Whereas the mediator will be like, okay, haven't they suffered enough? And that's where the negotiation also happens as well. So as for me, you have to show value of not just who you are, is in the actual problem. And people do respect you for who you are, regardless if we like it or not. And if other professions do come in and do it, I don't say it won't work, but the thing is, as lawyers, because you already know the law and you already have that, and I grew up in it, so I don't know, different professions, but sometimes you've got different professions, like, for example, a real estate person will have so much negotiation skills that sometimes a lawyer doesn't, because they use it on an everyday basis. So it is open for other areas, but as for me, I'm only going to follow what is surrounded by me at the moment.
But I think what we need to discuss is that on one end, when you see a litigation or you see a lawyer in action in courts, you actually see that happening and someone's doing that. And I feel a role of a good mediator is you don't even know what the mediator did and it happened. So now how do people value something which definitely they don't even know? Oh, what did the mediator do? But that's the skill of the mediator. So that aspect is also how people value that aspect of it, which they don't even see what's happening. And I've been talking about, yeah, Selva.
But that's the best part of mediation.
Exactly.
Because you have to do such a good job in private that it becomes a suspense for people. And like, say I, completed a matter. Those people are going to go tell their friends, oh, she did it. And how did she do it? Oh, just go to her. So they wouldn't be like, oh, go watch her. Because maybe if they watch me and they'll be like, oh, no, she doesn't know what she's doing. Whereas they don't know. All they know, she got the result. And I think that's the best part of mediation. It's better not to be like,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. But I think also we have to look at the fact that you said word of mouth. The problem that I am seeing, because I again look at a mature market like the US, and I still see that after 40, 45 years, if mediation had gone about with the word of mouth, today they would not have 100 million cases going into courts every year. So fundamental issues. One is, has mediation largely become deal making by lawyers? And whether that's the process that is handled. So do people really want to go first to a mediator and not have lawyers involved? So I mean, a lot of those aspects we need to discuss as we go along. Of course, we're just picking up points right now. We'll take it up later as we go. And if you feel some aspect is not covered in the schedule, please put it out. Let's discuss those aspects, because I feel that a lot of things are not discussed. And because of that, mediation goes in a certain path. I know that a mediation bill, of course, Jawad is, of course, he knows about it, the mediation bill which has gone into parliament. And I feel while drafting that, the people who were drafting it, I don't think they knew the larger picture. They have the larger picture. So do we need to bring that larger picture out to people who even draft the legislation? So legislation is a discussion we'll have. So that part of it is really important, because word of mouth definitely is an important aspect which will spread it. But then you, on the other end, you said about teaching someone a lesson, or that aspect of it, just wanting an apology. How that's the skill of the mediator, yes, but do you reach mediation? So get them to the mediation is the important part. After that, that aspect will be, the mediator will handle that. So now, how do we get them there? Word of mouth, you said, what other things? So Jawad will, of course, take us through with his experience and vast experience. How do we do that? Yeah, Jawad.
Well, see, I think somebody asked me when I said I'm going for a mediation training program. One of my friends asked me, "How many mediators are you going to train?" So I said, perhaps 1.3 billion. That's the population of India. So when we are talking of mediation, Vikram, we are talking of a lot of interpersonal skills. We are talking about how communication should take place. We are talking about what is empathetic listening. We are talking about listening skills where you try to understand what the other person is saying instead of being judgmental about it. We are talking about negotiation skills where you where you understand what are your real underlying interests to help the other person to understand what their underlying interests are. So we are talking about so many interpersonal skills, basically, which I would call them as life skills. Now, if you ask me how mediation has affected me, see, there was a point of time, and I'm not ashamed to say so, that I was prone to quick anger. And I used to be, when I was angry, I would be liberal with my fists. Now, what mediation training has done is actually, I have transformed completely now, where even getting into an angry argument is something that I don't do. Because I pause, I reflect, I just step back for a minute, I just try to see what the other person is trying to say, understand the other person's perspective, and then start from that point. Okay. So if you say that, the only difficulty I have in lawyers monopolizing mediation is that, yes, we are basically the option that people have to come to if they have a dispute. But what I'm saying is that it should be more widespread, where I think, see, there are two things. One is the process expertise and the other is the domain expertise. Now, the process expertise is something that a mediator necessarily has to possess, because that is where all your skills of communicating, your skills of negotiating, your skills of facilitating, all these things come into play. Now, as far as the domain is concerned, I think supposing I'm mediating a dispute which relates to intellectual property, I can always have a co-mediator who's an expert in intellectual property law, or perhaps the lawyers can help me or assist me in understanding the intellectual property law to see whether the agreement that we reach complies with whatever the law says. So it's in accordance to the law. So the thing is, mediation operates under the shadow of the law, no doubt about it, because ultimately when you reach an agreement, that agreement has to stand the test of legal scrutiny. It has to be a lawful agreement that is enforceable. To that extent, the role of lawyers is very important in mediation. But if you're talking about, whether lawyers alone should be mediators and whether lawyers should have that exclusive monopoly over mediation, I don't think so, because I feel that the volume of disputes, the volume of conflict that is there in society, each and every person should possess those skills, because that's why we are talking about training school children in mediation skills. We are talking about peer mediation, where they can have a group of students who would help children to talk to each other, their own peers to talk to each other and resolve their conflicts. So, training them from that age would help them to grow up in whichever profession they may go or whichever walk of life they may follow. Those are the skills that they would be imbibing and they would be cultivating. Now, I'm aware of the fact that some people are naturally endowed with a lot of skills. Okay, you always talk about people out there in the villages, in the communities, who have those natural...
And the schools. I also say schools.
Yes, and the schools, wherever, every walk of life. There are people who are endowed with those skills. But what happens when you train them is that you're helping them to understand how to use those skills, to first of all recognize that they have those skills. Because when we talk of the learning curve, we talk of a journey from a stage of unconscious incompetence to a stage of conscious competence, right? So people have the skills. Perhaps somebody may be a very good listener. Perhaps somebody may be a very good negotiator, but if they don't recognize those skills, they don't know how to use those skills. Sometimes they may naturally use those skills, but then when some problem comes, they get stuck. They don't know how to overcome that problem because they don't know how to proceed further. They are not trained in that. So that is where I think you and I have a little bit of disagreement on that, because I believe the training is necessary, because it helps you to recognize those skills. Not the 40-hour factories. I'm not talking about the 40-hour factories, which you always, lose no opportunity to deprecate. I'm saying that, the 40-hour factories are the starting point. They are not the ending point of a mediator's training. So that is where you start your journey from, because you need some basic launch pad where you understand that, okay, these are all the things that I need to learn as a mediator, and this is how I need to communicate, and this is how I need to empathize, and this is how I need to help parties to talk to each other. You start your journey from there, and then you keep on building your skills. Okay, you keep on developing those skills, you keep learning more and more. You learn from experts, you learn from others who are really good at their jobs. So you go and learn from them, you learn from your own experience. Your own experience teaches you that, okay, this is where I missed the bus, this is where I made a mistake, and I should avoid it in my next mediation. So the 40-hour training program is not the be all and end all of mediation training.
Well, let me tell Selva, because he's using this. I'm going to point this out. I keep saying that, one, you don't train them, they have skills. So now I've been asking him for a long time, please change the terminology to skill development. He's not willing to listen to me, so he's going to use that. And also I keep saying that the whole concept of in 40-hour factories, the problem is they say we'll make a mediator, and I have a big issue with that you don't make mediators in 40-hour factories. So that's one thing that he's missing out on, that, because I have to point this out, because she doesn't know this aspect background, that where I come from. The other thing, he's lying. He says now he's not argumentative. He doesn't use his fists anymore. He uses his words. I have seen that. You see him on a WhatsApp group that you listen to him. He's still got that whole anger sitting inside, which I have to take out, which I've been telling him for a long time. He has to move away from those negativity around him, but that also affects him. I mean, I'm just saying that because I really like Jawad, and I really want him to move out of that negativity. We had this I have a show called In Conversation with a Beautiful Mind, which we did last year. And that time, since then, I've been telling him, please move away from all these negative things around the news and everything, but he's a little affected by that. So that aspect of different. But what I will take up, Jawad, is that domain expertise and the law part of it. Because, first, let's just say hi to Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Hi.
That's Sarah. Selva is based in
everyone.
Australia. She's in Sydney, and Jawad is in India. So we'll get you in also in the discussion. You can be part of the discussion. It's not that you can't be part of the discussion, although you are taking up the next session.
So just to clarify, Vikram, I have no disagreement with you on the 40 hours. I'm agreeing with you that it is a skill development. Okay. That is why I said it is only a launching pad. It's a starting point of your skill development. Because what you learn under the 40-hour training program is basically that these are the skills I need. And it's not that those skills are going to be acquired in 40 hours. You need to, that is where your development starts, your growth starts.
No, actually,
yes, you're absolutely right. Certain things do affect me, but then I'm human. And see, the thing is,
no, I don't want you to be human. I want you to rise above that, Jawad.
I'm not a saint. I don't want to be.
That's what we were discussing before this, Sarah. We were saying that this whole aspect of the fact that mediators should not really get anything. They should rise above all that. And I was just telling her, she was talking about lawyers. And I said, in India, there's one particular lawyer we were talking about. He gets $30,000 per hearing. And here Jawad is in the court system. I'm not. So he tells us he gets $100 and he might go through hours and hours of sessions because all kinds of matters come. So the thing is, I was telling him, we'll wear those saffron robes or white robes and we'll be on the streets. So he has to be a saint if he has to continue that. But important one, I tell you the domain part of it, Jawad. The fact is that domain expertise, process expertise. Now, the point of domain expertise, like you said, maybe you can get a co-mediator. I'm saying even that is not required, because what kind of specialized knowledge is required, you can bring that person as an expert. I mean, there's no problem in that. Because it's a flexible process, you can get whom you want. And in terms of the fact of the law that you said that, okay, you get into an agreement, has to be tested against the law. And I've been saying this, look, if reasonable people sit together and they are fair and just and equitable, that has to be the law. Because if it's not the law, we will challenge that law. Because how can a law be unreasonable and unfair and unjust, unequitable, inequitable? So we have to
now sorry to interrupt. See, now Mediator Vikram is becoming lawyer Vikram by saying that law can be unjust. Law, that is exactly, it is only the injustice, societal injustice that affects me, and it's perfectly normal to get affected by that.
No, you're not going to get affected.
Because I'm a mediator, I should not get affected by something which is unjust or which is unfair that is happening in society.
No, Javad, you have to. Why you have to?
I think it's great that you're that the injustice impacts you, because for me it says that you care about these justices and you're caring about the business of peacemaking, right? And so we recognise it, but we as mediators have that responsibility to create the distance in the process management, so we can recognise it, but we don't get drawn into it.
But this is, no, Sarah, what you're talking about is outside the mediations, in life in general. I want to put him in the bubble that I am, where we cut off ourselves from all the negativity around, because it is thrown at us by people who have vested interests. We don't even know what they are saying. Anything you can put out there in social media, on the news, nothing happens. I'm sure some countries keep trying it, but still, how much can they really get into it? Because you can make any statement you like about anyone you want, and you can get away with it. So that's the negativity I want to keep him away, because he has lots to contribute to the field, but a lot of his time goes into handling that part of it. So that's the place where I'm coming from. But Selva, there was some. I mean, these are the points I was talking about. I mean, I will keep talking about it, but please, you come in, because we might not have too much time. So you want to kind of a concluding kind of thing, and we'll continue the discussion. We can have another session on this, because it's a very important topic. Getting mediation to the people is definitely an important topic. So we can have more discussions on it. That's not a problem. So today we'll have to kind of conclude it, because Sarah is here and her session starts in, say, 7 minutes. So please. Yeah, Selva.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me today. And it was really nice, seeing both of you. And I really appreciate, the discussion, because it's like an open door. So it is a big area. And I guess we have become, we're growing and we are getting out there. And do you know what I mean? You never know what can happen in a couple of years. But the more internationally people work together, the more the word is out. And today, everything's online. So the more online things that we do, I guess, before we know it, we are going to conclude and we are going to get there. So thank you for having me, and hope to see you all again. Take care.
Yeah, please, Selva, you can drop into all the sessions. I mean, you've got the Zoom link, the same Zoom link. The schedule is out there. I don't know whether no one looks at my posts. No one looks at my emails. No one looks at Jawad sends me a message. Please send me the Zoom link. Whereas emails after emails I keep sending. So please look at the schedule if you can find it. If you can't find it, just send me a message. I'll send it to you. But please drop in, because we need views and thoughts and perspectives from all over the world. So please drop in. Please, Jawad, some concluding thing.
Yeah, Selva, it was wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your views. Well, I think as far as taking it to the people is concerned, I mean, a lot needs to be done on that score, because first of all, creating the awareness and letting people know. First of all, even the lawyer community itself to know that, mediation, what kind of process it is and how it is going to help their clients, that becomes very important. And taking it to the people, I think ultimately it will happen. And I see a lot of hope when I see the younger generation, because basically in India, if I can just take 2 minutes.
Please.
Sarah's time, I'm sorry.
Only thing, Jawad, you can take 2 minutes only if you had also thanked me for the wonderful conversation. Only Selva, you don't find the conversation with me wonderful. That's a little sad.
That's the problem. See the impatience of this man. He doesn't want to wait for me to conclude before you're the host, Vikram. I have to thank you in the end.
Okay, no problem. I'm okay with it. I'm okay. Any point of time, beginning and middle, I'm okay with it.
Okay. So, what I was trying to say was that, the culture, because a culture plays a very important role in the way you choose to resolve your disputes. Because if you see a high context culture like India, where hierarchies are entrenched and, we are brought up in a joint family structure where you are not, you're told to obey authority and to, these are all important factors that play a very important role in our ability or capacity to take decisions. Now, mediation basically is all about you taking the responsibility of deciding on your own how you want to resolve your disputes. Now, that is going to happen, I think, over a period of time in India, because we can't expect miraculous turnaround in the way we are brought up, in the way our culture works. We are told whom to marry. We are told so much so that even when a husband and wife should have their conjugal relationship is decided by others, by studying so many things like the the horoscopes and all that have to match, and only at that point of time they are allowed. So in this in our kind of a culture, it's going to take some time, because people need to develop that mindset of thinking independently on their own, taking responsibility for decisions on their own. So it's going to take some time. So I'm very confident that it is going to happen, because slowly our younger generation especially are coming out of that mold, and they're starting to think on their own. And they're, for example, a niece of mine is refusing to get married simply because her father insists that she should get married because she's 28 years old. And she says, I'm perfectly happy. I have a career of my own. So I'm very happy to see that kind of, development that's happening among the youth, because they are taking decisions on their own. And that is where I feel that the culture of mediation is going to become well established in India once this generation comes onto the center stage. So thank you, Vikram. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Okay.
That sounds like a forced thing, but I don't know why I was telling you, because the thing is, next session I have to start on time, because otherwise social media thinks that you're not having that and it cancels it. It says event cancelled. That's why I was saying that, say that, and then you can take us anywhere you want.
All right. So thanks a lot.
No, but Jawad, what has come out from that is that the various points that you have discussed and we've discussed, if there's sessions that you want to schedule, let's schedule them on those points. Culture and developing a culture of mediation seems to be an important thing, what you've just mentioned. So we can take that up as a topic. So thank you, both of you. And of course, Sarah, to drop in. Thank you very much. And of course, you can stay part of the next session, not a problem. All I'm doing is just cutting off the live stream and I'm continuing it. So you people can please stay.